Okay, our next tissue type is nervous tissue. So learning target 6 says I can define, describe, and visually recognize nervous tissue. This is another tissue that we don't go too in depth in during this unit because we're going to see it more later on the year when we get to the nervous system, but just something we can be aware of right now as one of the 4 main tissue types. Nervous tissue is found in brain, spinal cord, and nerves throughout our body. Brain and spinal cord are the main areas of communication. Then obviously our nerves are transmitting signals from our brain and spinal cord to our limbs, to our hands, to our glands, to everything, communicating. Main job of that nervous tissue is to communicate. They are able to communicate through these things called action potentials, which are basically electrical signals. This is one of those really amazing things of the human body, the fact that it can transmit electrical signals and communicate in milliseconds. These action potentials allow us to transmit information very quickly, store information in our brain and spinal cord, and then integrate it, or basically take action with that after we've processed something. So think of this. I put my hand on a hot stove. My gut reaction is to move it real quick, right? So why did that happen? Well, I have these nerves or sensory processes in my hands that say this is really hot. I send that signal to my brain. My brain says, hey, moron, get your hand off the stove. So what happens? My brain then sends a signal to the muscles of my arm and hand to move it back. Think how quick that process works. That's all because of these electrochemical signals or these action potentials happening in our body. And if you remember from Unit 1, it's that word conductivity that allows it to happen. There's 2 main types of cells of nervous tissue. First, you've probably heard of neurons. These are the actual conducting cells that are carrying those impulses. And then we have these things called glia or neuroglia, which are basically supporting cells, which kind of help the nerve cells or the neurons and support it, help it do its job. This right here is a neuron. You can see the main parts of it. The first one I have, and let me get my pointer out here. This area here is the cell body. The cell body is what is going to contain all of the stuff. So if you go back to biology and think of all the stuff that's in a cell, so the nucleus and all that other things, but it's where all of the information is basically processed within the cell. Next, we have dendrites. They receive action potentials. So a message came from over here, it passed it over to the dendrites. The dendrites take that signal and send it to the cell body. Another name for the cell body is the soma, by the way, S-O-M-A. Okay, so the dendrites receive the message, and then finally the axon. So the axon carries the message away from the cell body to something that we're trying to send that action to. So let's think of this. This brain up here. Oops, let me go back. I have the brain sends a signal. It carries it to this neuron through the dendrites. The dendrites take it to the cell body. The cell body processes that information, and let's say this is going to a muscle. That's the muscle to move your hand, right? Which would take way more neurons than just one, but this is just an example. The axon is the one that's carrying the signal to those muscles to tell you to move, okay? Here you got an idea of what these things look like under a microscopic view. You can see the dendrites, you can see a little bit longer axon, and notice that the nucleus is within that cell body. I have different types of, I don't know where to put this, of neurons. I have bipolar, pseudo-unipolar, and multipolar. We're not even going to get into that right now. Just a picture for you to see what these things are going to look like. We will talk about those with the nervous system probably in quarter 4. And that is literally it for the nervous system for right now. But the main message there is that we have electrochemical signals being carried by neurons.